All right, welcome back. This is the Coach Mark Gottfried Show, and man, I am fired up today because I've got a great friend who's also just done amazing things in basketball his whole life. And welcome into Seth Greenberg of ESPN, former Division I successful college basketball coach, and doing a great job as a broadcaster. Seth, how are you?
Fred, I'm doing pretty good. I'm sitting here in Avon, Connecticut. It's like 10 degrees outside. It's going to snow tomorrow. We're supposed to get a nor'easter. You're sitting there, palm trees behind you of some sort. Like it's 75 and sunny. The weathermen are comedians in Southern California because there's no weather to talk about. Where did I go wrong?
So just with that answer, our listeners can understand why you have been so good on television with that answer right there. But let's go back, Seth. I want to start. You're growing up there in New York, and obviously, like all of us, we had a passion for basketball. But a little bit of your story of you go to college, play college basketball, but the dream to coach started somewhere. Tell me a little bit about that.
It's a really crazy story. It really started when I was about probably 10 years old, and my dad played at LIU for the great Claire B, who was one of Bob Knight's obviously mentors. And Coach B used to do something. He ran the basketball academy at Kutcher's Academy after he retired. And so he would go around in the springtime and recruit campers basically to come to the camp. And while he did that, he would always visit former players. My dad being a former player, all of a sudden, my dad goes, "We got a big treat tomorrow." I said, "What's that?" And I'm 10 years old. I don't know, maybe 9 years old. Coach B is going to come see me. And he explains who Coach B is, his college coach at LAU and all that jazz. And all of a sudden, Coach B comes in the house. And I just remember sitting on the floor and listening to him tell stories. And like literally the impact those stories had on my dad and listening to my dad, that relationship. And I said, man, that's unbelievable. So I go from there to obviously trying to be a good player, which I was very mediocre. My brother Brad was a really good player, uh, to the five-star basketball camp as a rising sophomore. Brad was a senior. And I got a chance to listen to the UB Browns, the Chuck Daly's, and the Marv Kesslers, and all these people. And as I'm watching and listening and hearing and seeing these coaches come in to watch us play, I had a love for the game. My dad instilled that in us. Uh, I all of a sudden just got all caught up in what a great way to continue your life, just to stay in the game and to be able to impact other people. And so through Five Star, through Howie Garfinkel, who built a bridge for so many of us to cross to pursue our dream in coaching, Five Star back then, it was before grassroots basketball, as you know, and it was the meeting place for basketball in the summer, where all these coaches from all over the country would come and watch players play, no numbers on the back, shirt and skins, outside. One basket's 10 feet, one basket's 9'8", hot as hell, food sucked. But you got a chance to see that and meet people. And through Brad getting recruited and me getting recruited to some extent and going back to Five Star all those times, it became a passion. And through that experience, then working the camp and developing relationships through working the camp, uh, I was able to chase my dream, and that was to coach. And I didn't know where it was going to take me. I didn't have any idea. I mean, like to me, I had no idea. And I'm sure, like you, the first coaching job I ever had, I never asked what I was making. The second coaching job I ever had, I never asked what I was making. When I
Mhm.
became the head coach at Long Beach State, I couldn't tell you what they paid me. So it started at a young age, and I fell in love with the game. I fell in love with the idea of impacting someone else's life, and that's really where it started. It started, Coach B to Five Star to working camp to meeting coaches who impacted me. My college coach, Alabama, was, you know, a night assistant at Army. He was crazier than crazy, but I picked Fairleigh Dickinson mainly because he was such a great coach and great teacher, and that's it. Just kind of grew from there.
Seth, you talked about five-star basketball camp, and I never worked the camp, but I was a participant for 2 years back in, let's see, that would have been 80, 81. I can remember Michael Jordan was there the one year, and at the beginning of the week, he wasn't even considered, if
Joe
people
Ward.
have a hard time understanding, he was like the next best guy out of North Carolina, or one of those, because Buzz Peterson was considered like the best player from North Carolina. And as a camper, you get there on Sunday and you're like, okay, who's here? And you're trying to figure out the other players. But it's interesting, back then, the camp style, the camp setting, where you're actually going to stations and you're learning about dribbling, passing, shooting, moving without the ball, the fundamentals of the game, which in my view, I think you probably would agree, we've kind of gotten away from teaching that as well to the young players. But if you go back there, and I remember going to Coriopolis, Pennsylvania, I was all excited, but what an impact for guys like yourself that work there. And I've met so many guys that were counselors every year. I mean, teachers, coaches every year. Yeah. And then you build a network with each other as coaches. You have opportunities to develop friendships with other guys. And then we're playing against the best players in the country. I remember Ralph Sampson was working the camp as a high school player, because back then he couldn't even go for free. He had to work to pay his tuition. But talk about the I'm glad you brought that up. I wasn't even thinking about 5-star, but what a great opportunity for so many people for so many years.
5-star was amazing. You talk about Michael Jordan. A quick Michael Jordan story is, I'm working camp. Dave Odom, coach of Wake Forest. Before that, he was an assistant at Virginia, North Carolina guy. I come to camp. It was a big thing to teach a station. If you were a college guy and you were asked to teach a station, like, you did not want to let Garth down. Like, you prepared and you had 2 lesson plans. Now, you got to stand out. Station 6 days in a row, almost 2 hours, 30 minutes a session. All right. You saw four groups each day. So you went 4, 4, 4. And then the next day you had a second part of your lesson plan. And you worked your ass off. And I'll tell you what, Garth was watching it. You didn't do a good job at the station. I mean, he was up your rear end. I mean, he was challenging. But you were scared. And then we went from stations to station 13, where you could teach, individual workouts. That was another part of it. But I'm there. I'm a freshman in college. When Dave Odom comes up to me, he goes, Berg. He goes, there's a dude at this camp no one knows. He's unbelievable. And I'm going, come on, Garth. I'd be like Isaiah Thomas, Moses Malone, Mark Aguirre, Michael Corrin. I mean, I could go right down the list. He goes, he's unbreaking believable. So all of a sudden, tryouts come, and I couldn't see tryouts because I was doing the ABA, not the NBA coaching. And the draft, the number 1 player in the country was a guy named Joe Ward, Jumping Joe Ward, who went to Georgia.
That's right.
So Joe Ward was the number 1 pick. Jordan got picked somewhere real early. So I didn't see him play. So first game of the summer at in Pittsburgh was Joe Ward's team versus Jordan's team. All right. Now, the best players played the second and fourth quarters. The guys that weren't as good plays the first and third. But there was also a horse, and a horse could play as many as like 3.5 quarters.
That's right.
So the game goes on. This is a true story. I come walking over. Odom's sitting there, goes, Barry, come over here. And Michael Jordan is absolutely terrorizing Joe Ward. Game's over. You kept scoring. You knew how many points you scored, assists there, but Jordan had like 40. Joe Ward had like 10. Joe Ward never recovered from it. All-Star game, same thing happened. And the story of Michael Jordan, Odom told me, he goes, no one even knows who this dude is. He's unbelievable. Yeah. And it was, but 5-star was a great, what 5-star did for all of us. You talk about building a network. My brother, John Calipari, John Roebuck. You can go down a list of guys: Rick Pitino, Mike Fratello, U.B. Brown, Chuck Daly, Ron Rothstein. You can go down a list of people that worked at that camp. Jerry Wainwright. That camp built a bridge for all of us to cross to chase our dreams. And it's a tight fraternity. I mean, to this day, those guys that I went there to, and worked with, are still some of my closest friends and people that we've stayed in touch with and have lifelong relationships with.
It's amazing. And people, like you mentioned earlier too, Seth, they don't realize We played outdoor.
Oh,
Some days it's a little windy.
oh,
You had a rubber ball and like a wood backboard. I mean, the old, it wasn't a glass backboard. You had the
no.
kind of, and you had to play on the outdoor courts. And it was unbelievable where, back in that era, these guys today, they would never even consider playing outside with a rubber ball, with that kind of a setting. But we all did it, and it was such a great play. So, Seth, talk about then from, you're now post-college playing, and you want to get into coaching. And, we all got our first crack. Everybody, we all got it somewhere, and some people helped us along the way, and they gave us an opportunity. So for you, some of those guys early on in your coaching career, because it went on to be an amazing coaching career, but we all started somewhere. We all started, and somebody helped us along the way. How about for you?
For me, it's kind of interesting because, I've been fired a couple times and we all have. So when I graduated, I went right before I even graduated, the month before I graduated, Tom Penders just came to coach Fordham. And through the five-star connection, uh, Tom had a graduate assistant position open. But back then, graduate assistants could recruit, they could do whatever they wanted to. So while I was still in school, I would drive across the GW Bridge, up 87, get off Fordham Boulevard, and I would literally go in every single day and work. I'd go recruiting on the weekends. I did, on my own dime. I didn't even know you got reimbursed, and so I was all over. Back then there were all kinds of tournaments, citywide, and I was all over the place. And from that, I didn't even know what I was getting paid. Like I didn't know what a graduate assistant position paid or was paid. Did I get housing? I mean, I had no idea. Buddy Mahar, who was the coach of Columbia, who got Tom's job at Columbia, saw me all over the place. And all of a sudden I get this phone call. I'm 21 years old. He goes, Seth, this is Buddy Mahar. I just got the Columbia job. I've seen you all over the place. I'd like to sit down and talk with you. Would you like to be an assistant coach here? So legitimately, I'm 21 years old. I'm working for Tom. Buddy was Tom's assistant. He calls me up. I remember I meet on the west side, like in like 120th Street, some little burger joint. And I'm sitting with Buddy and I finished the meeting. The next weekend was my graduation. I go to graduation. I get a call, no cell phones. I get a call back in my dorm. I'm moving out of my apartment at Fairleigh Dickinson, Harvard on the Hackensack. And it's Buddy Maher. He says, congratulations on graduation. Can you come see me on Monday at 11 Gymnasium in the office? I said, yeah, sure. You want to visit again? Yes, I want to talk to you again. So literally, day after graduation, driving to the city, walk into Buddy's office. Kenny Williamson, better known as the Eggman, who was a
Yep.
famous assistant coach, worked for Jimmy Valvano all those years at Iona. Great job in the NBA. He and I are sitting and waiting to speak to Buddy. We're sitting by his side. I go, what's up, Eggman? How you doing? Da, da, da. He comes walking in and he hands us keys. He says, I want you two guys to be my assistant coach. So
Wow.
I got the Columbia job, which was crazy.
Wow.
And I was
Wow.
21 years old. I was coaching guys a year older than me. I was coaching guys a whole lot smarter than me at Columbia. I mean, I'd send them notes like after practice work. I'd have punctuation problems. I'd have spelling issues. I mean, those guys would send it back to me like with the corrections in a red pen. I mean, it was unbelievable. So I spent the 2 years there. Then I got a chance to go to University of Pittsburgh with Roy Chipman again
Yep.
through just working hard through five-star a lot. Garth was the
Mm-hmm.
guy that helped it. I was there for
Mm-hmm.
3 years. We had 3 great years. Brought Clyde Vaughn with me, who was
Mm-hmm.
a great player at five-star, who I couldn't recruit when I was at
Mm-hmm.
Columbia, but I used to work him out. It's a kind of a funny story. I think people say he got an advantage in five-star. Clyde loved ball, so we just became friends. I mean, I was a young kid. I worked him out every single night at five-star, knowing I could never recruit him, but I like to work out guys. So when I got the pit job, he called me up. He said, Coach, I just saw you got the pit job. I was going to go to DePaul. Yeah, but you're a pit. I consider pit. Comes
Wow.
to visit, commits. And, so
Wow.
that, but then I got fired there. I got fired there for some stuff that I refused to do, truth be told. I wouldn't do something that
Yeah.
people asked me to do. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I got let go and my life was changed. And we all have a mentor. You have Coach Herrick, I know. I have, and everyone who's listening, find a mentor, find someone to invest in
Yes.
you that
Yes.
asks nothing in return. And Dave Odom helped me get with Coach Holland. Coach Holland recruited Mark Averoni, who was my high school center. So I got a chance to meet him then, again, because I wanted to coach. When coaches came in, I would introduce myself, get to know them. I got let go, and all of a sudden, it's the end of the summer. I had nothing going on. I was going to sell radio ad time for WTAE radio in Pittsburgh. And I get a call from Coach Odom saying, Berg, the big whistle wants you to come and spend a year with us as a GA. I rent my apartment to Kurt Signetti, the coach of Indiana football right now. I rent my apartment to him. I think he still owes me money. All right. And I have to get to return my rent a car, my courtesy car. I buy this ridiculous old Thunderbird with 1,000 miles on it because I had no money, a trailer, and I'm driving through the mountains to get to Charlottesville, Virginia. Jim Larinaga, who was another assistant on the set, had no idea I was coming. I walk in,
Wow.
I go, hey, Coach Larinaga, how you doing? He goes, what are you doing here? But Coach Holland, and I say this, and I get emotional when I talk about it, he changed my life.
Mm,
I can tell you from every major decision I made the rest of my life,
mm,
I made one phone call, and that was to Coach
mm,
Holland. Every time I changed jobs, including ask Karen to marry me. Like
mm,
that summer so he helped me get the Miami job after the year in Virginia, and that summer when they came down, so I get the Miami job, and literally he comes down to go to the Keys and with his wife and Dave Odom. He said, "Burr, come on down. You want to come down, hang out with us? We're at the Keys. I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." He goes, "Can I?" I said, "Can I bring someone? I'm dating someone." So legitimately, Karen and I, we drive down. This is like a month into our relationship. We drive down to the Keys, spent 2 days with him, having an amazing time. Coach was just amazing to me. As we're driving around the property, Miss Odom and Miss Holland are walking around with Karen. Oh, we're running and they're in a golf cart. And I'm going, holy shit, this is not going to end good. They're probably just killing me. And at the end of the weekend, Miss Holland and Coach Holland called me into their room, and they just said, Berg, she's the one. Don't screw it
wow.
up. And
Wow.
and a year later, we got married, and we've been together for 40 years. And Coach
Wow. Isn't
Holland
that amazing?
going from Miami to Long Beach, going from Long Beach to South Florida, going from South Florida to Virginia Tech. I'm talking about 3 and 4 hour conversations on the phone in the middle of the night when we were on the West Coast. He and we to talk through everything. The most amazing.
Mm.
He changed my life. He changed my the way I looked at almost everything in life.
Seth, where did you? Maybe it was from Terry. Maybe it was just from all your contacts. 'Cause you got some icons, that have been involved with you. But you were able to, and a lot of people don't understand all this. But you were a guy that won everywhere you went, and you win at Long Beach State. That Jerry Tarkanian, the great coach from UNLV, was there at one time, had a great run, and probably you and he are the two guys that have had success at Long Beach State. Period, and a lot of it, big wins, winning the league, winning the tournament. You go to South Florida, same thing. You're winning at South Florida. You go to Virginia Tech. You had a great run at Virginia Tech, recruited some great players, but you're competing in the ACC with, in my view, having been in the ACC for 7 years,
You beat us by
that job
100
to
one
me,
night.
yeah, but you got disadvantages there. Blacksburg is not the easiest place to get to, and you got the old arena. There's some things, and that job is really hard in that league, but you still won there. But as you kind of move through your coaching career, as far as like you've got the great mentors, but then developing your philosophy of how you want to coach, how you want your teams to play,
Yeah.
those type of things. Talk about kind of the genesis of all that for you.
Yeah, it was real simple. Yeah, my college coach had a huge impact on me. He was a great defensive coach. He was right up there with Coach Iba in terms of all you man defense. But in the end, what it came down to me in terms of developing my coaching philosophy was the hardest playing, toughest team finds a way to win.
Mm,
And I was at places that were hard. Long Beach was the easiest job I had. And when we took it over with Joe and Harrington, Lou Olson did a great job for 2 years there as well, or maybe only one. But I found out watching those UNLV teams, like, yeah, they had great players, but they were the hardest playing, toughest team. And I
yes, they
as
were.
I went along in my coaching career, I said, you know what? The most important thing is to connect with players, get them to want to play for you because you're going to win the games you're supposed to win. But to win the games you need to win, those dudes got to play for you. And I watched Coach
Mm,
Tarkanian; those guys played for him um,
mm,
to get the hardest playing, toughest team. Then I think every place you work, and you worked at a bunch of different places also. You got to figure out how you're going to win in that arena.
yes.
So like in
Yep.
Long Beach, my thing was we're going to recruit Southern California. We're going to get multi-positional players. We played positionless before it was fancy to play positionless. I mean,
Yep.
took Chris
We
Tower.
did.
He was our 6'11" center. We ran, roll,
Yeah, you did.
replace, brought him behind before
Hmm.
anyone did all that kind of stuff. And we played more forward,
Hmm.
five out type stuff. Brian Russell, Lucius Harris. And we had really good players. I mean, they made me look smart, which is not easy. But we played really hard and we competed and we defended. But at Long Beach, it was Southern California kids, maybe get one or two guys there through a contact, but get guys to buy into being at home, playing hard, competing, trusting each other, and playing guys when they were young. Like I started with Russell, even though he redshirted his freshman year because he was a prop 48 as a freshman. Lucius Harris started as a freshman. I went to South Florida, and you know what? I tried to do the same thing, and I never. One of my greatest regrets at South Florida was it took me too long to figure it out at South Florida. We won
Mm,
games, but we had some great wins. We won at Louisville, which was a blast. We won at Memphis, so we had good wins. But we recruited just the state of Florida because out of state scholarships when I was at South Florida, unbeknownst to me, would count as two scholarships because they were just
ooh.
starting football. So we're recruiting all these in-state kids, but we didn't have enough what I call floor gamers. So we were really
Yep.
athletic. We played really hard. We could defend, but we weren't as skilled as say my Long Beach teams were really skilled. They played really hard, but really
Yes.
skilled. So I never
Yes.
figured, it really bothers me to this day that I never totally figured it out. And then we went to Virginia Tech and we're at the Big East at first. And first thing was our hardest playing, toughest team. They'd never been to the Big East tournament ever. One year we were in Big East. We sweep John Beeline. We sweep Georgetown. We beat Rutgers last game of the season. We go to the Big East tournament with starting two freshman guards, great guards, Jamon Gordon and Xavier Nadell, because we just guard the shit out of you. And we could
Hmm.
guard. We were offensive challenge, but we could guard. But then we moved into the
Hmm.
ACC, and we figured out we were going to recruit a very
You
small
did.
geographic footprint. All right, we
Hmm.
were going to recruit Virginia, North Carolina, going to Atlanta because Michael Vick was playing for the Falcons then. So we thought we could steal a guy in Atlanta because there's just so many players. Uh,
Hmm.
go into Maryland. That was it. And, we were fortunate and we got to buy an ACC tournament for our first 5 years. And, we
Hmm.
won a bunch of games and, we had chances.
Yep.
We won at Duke, we won at Carolina. We did some fun things,
Hmm.
but it was all back to 2 point guards. That's when
Hmm.
I decided if I'm going to play in this league, and you played in the league. That was when the league was
Hmm.
a killer, Mark. I
Ooh.
mean, I
Ooh.
said we got to play with 2 point guards because we can't turn it over. Because if we turn it over, we got no chance. And
Yep.
we got to guard the hell out of the ball. And we got to limit people to one shot. And we got to take people out of transition, make them play against their set defense. And
Hmm.
so I played Jamon Gordon and Xavier Dowdell. Then I played Malcolm Delaney and Eric Green. And I always had 2 point guards on the floor at all times so we get into offense. And again, we played more positionless
Yep.
because we felt that we could take the bigs, because the league had
Yep.
bigs then, away from the
Hmm.
basket. And I was really fortunate. We got lucky with some players. We
Yeah.
got lucky with A.D. Vasayo. He was supposed to go to Richmond. They
Yep.
changed
Hmm.
coaches. We got lucky with Deron Washington. No one recruited him. He played. He was perfect for what we did, and I was really fortunate. I tell people, and you and I both have been let go. I had 9 great years at Virginia Tech and one bad month,
Yep.
and whether
Well.
what happened
Yeah.
there is brutal. But and I made some mistakes also. But and it has nothing to do with being tough on people or coaching guys hard or
No.
being tough on my staff. I was hard on
No.
my staff. I was
Yep.
hard on myself. I mean, you want to win at
Yep.
Long Beach State, you want to win at Murray State, you got
Yep.
to freaking grind. But at my
Yep.
last year at Virginia Tech, I won with young guards. My first 4 years, I won young guards. My second 4 years, that last year. And what we did it with just toughness. That last group wasn't as tough, and I should have spent more time in special situations. We lost like 8 games by 5 points or less. But I had Dorian Finney-Smith as a freshman. We had Montrezl Harrell coming in. We had Eric Green. Jarrell Eddy played in the NBA. I would have had my best team, but I made a mistake. My biggest mistake was not the Steph Curry bullshit that people think, because that the true story has never been told. My
Hmm.
biggest mistake was I had this young team starting four freshmen. They didn't have the same DNA as those guys before them. So I should have spent more time, score, specials, ATOs, so that we could have closed out games. We used to close out games with our defense when they were young. The first 8 years, this team couldn't do that, and in a
Hmm.
way, it probably cost me my job.
Yeah. I go back and look back in my teams at NC State. We went in there and we all, I got fired, and sometimes you feel like it's unjustified and it's kind of screwed up, and if they make a decision, they have the right to. That's their right. But I looked at you, Seth, and I looked at your team that you had coming back with Montrezl Harrell coming in. A lot of people don't realize that. He was coming to Virginia Tech. Dorian Finney-Smith, who's now had a great career and just now got traded to the
Best.
Lakers, have been phenomenal. Um, the kid Eric Green, wow. I mean, what a player he was. But you had a chance to be really, really good. And to me, that's what sometimes hurt, like when I was at NC State, I'm thinking, boy, this next year, you know, they're just, if you give me a little patience, I had great years, then you had a couple of struggling years. But boy, I thought your team was positioned. You were positioned to take a massive step, and you didn't get that opportunity, which happens to a lot of us in coaching, and it's unfortunate. But that's what I thought about
Yeah,
when
well,
that all that happened at Virginia Tech.
yeah, it was hard, and it's really hard in your family. Like to me, people don't
Mm-hmm.
understand. Like, so you get let go. Like my daughters found out I got let go. They were in class. We had to get Jackie out of her elementary school class. I had a daughter that graduated from Virginia Tech and one that was a cheerleader for us. And excuse me, and that was really hard. I mean, like I
Yeah.
find out.
Yep.
I mean, I had a recruit on campus. I had no idea,
Yep.
none,
Yep.
zero, kaput. I had a recruit on campus. And all of a sudden I got to walk back, tell the recruit. I got to call
Yep.
my wife, get my daughters out of school. Ella finds out, someone looks at their phone, and all hell's breaks loose. Pages in New York City, uh, and it impacts
Yep.
us. But
Yep.
like your wives and your kids, they're like Doberman pinchers, man. And
Yep.
the thing that hurt me most is that we did the Pink Ribbon Luncheon. We did Special Olympics. We did Montgomery County Christmas Store. We did, yeah, you want to fire me, you have a
Mm-hmm.
right to fire me. I have no problem. That's why I have a contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I tell you what, you don't have a right to do. You don't have the right to disparage who
Yeah.
we are and the essence of what we did those
Yep.
9 years.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
to this day, that's the
Mm-hmm.
thing that pisses me off, because
Yeah.
the way it's not what you did, because he has a right to do that. All right. But
Mm-hmm.
it's how he did it. And,
Yeah.
that's one of those things. It is what it is. You move on. And I've been
Mm-hmm.
blessed, obviously,
Oh yeah.
to be able
Yeah.
to land on my feet, because not everyone lands on their feet.
Yeah, yeah, and it is hard. And most of us in coaching, we've all experienced it, and it's no fun. And it's happened to me, and it's no fun. And Seth, this comes up a lot. And people talk about, you watch Steph Curry now. You mentioned him a second ago. His dad plays at Virginia Tech, and it's easy for people to say, "Well, why didn't Virginia Tech recruit him?" My answer, though, I always tell people, is hold on a minute now. There was everybody in the ACC and the SEC. I mean, you got close by. It's Clemson and NC State, North Carolina and Duke, and you got, there's 25 schools that all watched him play
Mark,
too in
we
high
we we
school.
did we did recruit him. See that
Yeah,
I'll you know what I'll here's the deal. We did recruit him. We home visited him. He
yeah,
came to camp. Uh, he was around our guys, uh,
mm-hmm.
but we were also honest with him. We didn't have a scholarship available at that time. We got a commitment
Yeah,
from Nigel Munson, who was a terrific player at the Mather High School. We're out of scholarships. We asked them to wait. I said, the scholarship's gonna open up, but you got to be a little patient. We did tell them, and I was honest in the recruitment. I told them I got Zayden Dell and Jamon Gordon. Those guys are seniors. They're playing 35 minutes a game. I'm just telling you. They rode with me. They came in with me. Those dudes are playing 35 minutes a game. Well, one guy ended up ACC
mm-hmm.
Defensive Player of the Year. The other guy ended up All ACC. They led us to wins at Duke and North Carolina that year, into the NCAA tournament, and won a game. I said, you know what? Here's the deal. I'm riding with those guys. I'm going to be loyal to those
Yeah,
guys. I said,
yeah,
and then, the whole thing about the walk on. No, we said we redshirt. I said eventually a scholarship will open, but right now I can't offer you the league, and the university wouldn't let us over award.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
if you can be patient. Now, Bobby McKillop's calling me up, going, "What's going on with with Steph?" And I was honest with him. Bobby McKillop grew up, I grew up playing in the same parks with Bobby McKillop. And
Yeah.
I said, "Look, right now we don't have a scholarship. And, look, it worked out great for Steph Curry. I'm happy for him. I
Yeah.
really am.
Yeah.
Would I've
Yeah.
liked to have coached him? Yeah. But you know what?
Yeah.
I had two guys that stuck with me for 3 years, came to
Yeah.
Virginia Tech when it was an absolute vision and
Hmm.
stuck with it and went through the transition from the Big East to the ACC. Our first year in the ACC, we came in fourth place and got to buy in the ACC tournament. People
Right.
don't forget, Duke beat us by 100 at Duke. They come in with JJ Redick, his first time ever playing in Roanoke, and we sent him home with a loss.
Yeah.
I mean, we went from taking Virginia Tech, where they have average about 3,500
Yep.
people. We sold out after our first year. After the fifth home game, we sold out every single game for 9 years. But
Hmm.
I was going to ride with those kids. I mean, those were my
Yeah.
guys, and
No doubt.
I was
Yeah. No
honest.
doubt.
And I told Dell he needs to redshirt, physically not.
Yeah.
And Dell agreed
Yeah.
with me.
Yeah.
I mean, Dell
Yeah.
agreed with me. But look, I'm happy for.
Yeah.
Look.
Yep.
He's a great player. I'm
Yep.
happy for him. If they
Oh
want to
yeah.
take shots at me, so be it. That's fine. I'll tell you what, take shots at me for that. Then say thank me for Malcolm Delaney, Hall of Famer,
Yeah.
Xavier
Yeah.
Dell, Hall of Famer, Jamon Gordon, Hall of Famer, and
Yeah.
taking the worst program in the Big East and going into the ACC and going and saying when we went to the ACC, every single coach in that league, Mike, Roy, Gary, all those people said we're going to kill the league. And all what
Hmm.
happened by them saying that, then we won games and it made the
Yep.
league look bad.
Yep. Well,
So, I
like I
mean, look,
said,
there are
Seth,
things
Seth,
I
no,
would do differently, but
oh
it
yeah,
is what it is.
we all do it. But I always look back and say I wasn't at NC State then, but I look back and I look at everybody else in that league too. It's easy to look at a guy
Yeah,
later, and a lot of times kids benefit from going to a school like a Davidson or Murray State because they
yeah,
get to play early. They're getting 30. There's a different development for them, and that's good too. And so sometimes that works out where those guys flourish in a system that because they got to
yep,
play early, and it's maybe they don't have two guys like you had, or maybe
yeah,
Duke had or Carolina had or whatever,
yeah,
and they're not looking at Steph Curry at that time. So it's
yeah,
easy later to look back and go, oh yeah, well that type of thing. But we've all done it. It happens, and
yeah.
it's part of the turf. But Seth, let me ask you this question. You had a great run, and I coached 35 years. I think 24 of those I think were head coaching years, and 30 or maybe more than that. I think it was 30 something. I can't remember. But anyway, it was a lot of years. A lot of years as a head coach. I coached in the SEC, the ACC. I was at Ohio Valley. You had a great run throughout your whole career, highly respected. But then after Virginia Tech, you kind of pivoted. And, I did as well. And, I remember I was at ESPN and
Yeah.
you were there. And for me, I used to go to games, do games. Matter of fact, the first game I ever did was at Virginia Tech. It was an NIT game. Uh, I had just been let go at Alabama. Anyway, I sat there and I always said, why am I sitting on this side of the court? I should be sitting over there on that side of the court, and even though I had fun doing it and I think I was doing a good job, at my age at that point, I was still itching. Like, I'm not done yet. I want to accomplish some more as a coach. But for you, kind of walk me through your mindset, because one thing I admired about you, Seth, is, so many coaches, we wrestle so much in our own mind with when it should kind of end. But you did a great job. You pivoted, and then you've turned your broadcasting career into, it's just been phenomenal. You've had this phenomenal run. But most of us, like me, we were doing TV, but we only had one foot in and I had one foot out the whole time.
Yeah, it's hard. I thought I'd get back to coaching when I first started, but what we did do is we couldn't stay in Blacksburg. That was not that was not an option. Too
Right.
small town. You can't be anonymous in Blacksburg. So
Yeah.
my youngest daughter, Jackie, was going to be a senior. So we had to move. So when the offer came from ESPN, excuse me, I said, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to get a feel for being part of a team. I've been a part of a team my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 68 years old right now. I was 56 years old, and I've been part of the team for 56 years. So I said, you know what? Let's go and we'll move to Connecticut and we'll find a really good school. We wanted to make sure it was a good school. Jackie eventually played volleyball at Villanova, went to law school at Syracuse, is an attorney now, but we wanted to make sure, first and foremost, she was in a good environment. So we did that. We moved here. We got a chance to feel the culture a little bit at ESPN, what it stands for, what it's all about, the sense of community, especially in the stuff I was doing, which is more studio. We're like a little team in itself, which was fun. At least I felt I was part of something. I wasn't just like flying in from Atlanta, doing 2 days,
Right.
flying back. One, I would have missed her whole senior year, which I did not want to do. I put her through enough, getting let go and moving her across country her senior year of high school. For me to be flying back and being a part-time dad, I just didn't think it didn't work for me emotionally, to be honest with you. That I didn't want to have that guilt of having to do all that and then not being helping her navigate her senior high school. I mean, so Karen and I, we came here and we found a house, which is similar to our house in Blacksburg. I thought I was downsizing, but I didn't have a vote in that. Uh, and so everyone's got a room. The dog's got a room. There's a guest room. There's a, I mean, I didn't know we needed that, but we do. Uh, and
Uh,
you know, I've been offered jobs until the last 2 years. I've been offered jobs almost every year, and but I haven't pursued any per se. And the quality of life is great. Uh, which is good. I'm still in the game. I spend a lot of time mentoring coaches right now. I do a ton of time. Some very high profile guys uh, and younger coaches. So I spend a lot of time doing that, which I really enjoy. I get a chance to go watch UConn practice all the time, which gives me my fix. Dan and those guys have been great to me in terms of allowing me to come and just kind of sit in film sessions and sit in practice and talk with them. And it's been great for me. I get a front seat. Once game day starts to the best games and watch the best practice. I go around, watch about 20, 25 practices in the fall and speak to teams. So I miss it because you miss impacting, like it is,
yep.
Mark. You miss impacting
Mhm.
someone's life. I mean,
Mhm.
that's the thing you miss. I mean, like Christmas, holidays, when you get those phone calls from your former players, you get text messages, or they send a picture of when a baby's born, or
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
that's people don't understand. Like
Yeah.
we didn't get in it for
Yeah.
money. Money's crazy now.
Nope.
But like,
Mhm.
when we get off to this stuff, like I had no
Mhm.
idea. I didn't know I was going to
Mhm.
make money. I mean, so I didn't even ask how much I was going to get paid when I went to Virginia Tech, which is crazy.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
um, so I mean, we settled into this life, and it would have to be. I was offered two GM jobs last fall, last
Mhm.
spring.
Mhm.
One was to be on the floor and be a GM, and one was just to be a GM. And but it's you know, if I'm going to do this, I'd coach my own team. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
but I enjoy what I'm doing. I work with really good people. I work with the most,
Yeah.
as you know, the one thing about the TV thing is the producers, the directors, the research people, the people you work with. All they want you to do
Yeah.
is have a good show. That's all
Yep.
they do. They just want you to have a good show. Like,
That's
like,
right.
and all we're doing is talking ball. But
That's it.
the selfless people that you work with that are, like people look at ESPN and the fiber of ESPN is not quote unquote the talent, because I never look at myself as talent. The fiber
Yeah.
of what makes ESPN is the kids in
Mhm.
screening. It's the
Yeah.
researchers that start at the very top and end up being producers. It's
Yeah.
the segment
Same.
producers.
Yeah.
It's the
Same.
camaraderie. That and
Yeah.
that's what I've been able to find. It's been harder
Yeah.
the last few years because of layoffs and some changes, but that's what I've been able to find.
Yeah. Seth, when I went to ESPN, I was there 2 years, and we kind of overlapped. But for me, I loved to coach, and I wanted to coach, and I loved that locker room after a win. Boy, I just love, and I missed it. I missed that locker
Yeah,
room after a win. Where you've come
yeah,
in and everybody has poured into it, and their coaches and players, and it was a big game, and that celebration. Sometimes I'll see a clip
yeah.
on like Instagram of some coach
Oh yeah,
walking in the locker room and they're pouring
yeah,
water on him, and that's what I miss. You miss that.
yeah,
But then when I go to ESPN, I go and do 50 something games the first year, and the season ends, and I don't have anything to do till November. Like, And I'm a little bit like, okay, what am I going to do every day? Like, okay, I got to wake up and what am I going to
Yeah.
do? Like, I don't, we're so used to, you and I and all of us coaches, we grind it so hard that there was a little bit of a
Yeah.
transition it was great. I liked it, but it was like, I'm a little lost out here a little bit, Did you ever
Yeah.
find that too as you went into, in the off
Yeah.
season of television, it's like at the very beginning, okay, like, what am I going to do every day? And then later you kind
Yeah.
of settle in and say, oh, okay, I can take a trip. I can do this. I can go somewhere with,
Yeah.
like you with your wife or your kids or that type of thing. Did you find
Yeah.
that as well?
Yeah. Yeah. Like Karen would say, once August comes, like just to start the year, like once August comes, I get fidgety. Like I'm like, I'm kind of messed up. Like people say, what do you do in the summer? Now me, because of my background, like I start in June working on my notes for the come season. So this year, because of the transfer portal and everything that's going on, obviously college athletics, I mean, like I do my own basically college basketball magazine, talking about every Power Five conference, best mid majors, analytics, key players, key losses, what I think's good. What I mean, it's stupid. I mean, I'll sit here for hours upon a time. Kind of walk in here, what the hell are you doing? It's beautiful outside. So I'm trying to get organized. I mean, but yeah, I mean, it's I can only play so much golf. So
Right.
I do NBA summer league. I do a little bit for the draft. I was doing that TBT thing. That was fun. It kept me busy. My first few years, I went to the high school events, but I stopped doing that just because I didn't want to look like I was just kind of trying to hang on. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
The first few years, the first time walking in, my first year, uh, it was hard. It was
Yeah.
hard. And Tito, the coach, the old coach of the Red Sox, Francona, Terry Francona. He was working at ESPN at the time, and I was in the calf, and I had this conversation with him. I said, Coach, their baseball starting up, and I got a chance to visit with him. I said, Coach, I got to be honest with you. I said, He goes, how are you going to handle summer? He actually asked me. I said, well, I was thinking about going to some of the AU events and this and that. But I don't know if I could do it. I said, what do you mean? He goes, what do you mean? I said, I just don't know him. I mean, I'm pulling to Orlando and like walking in, I'm not a part of anything. I'm
Right.
here, these guys doing their jobs. I don't want to bother them doing their job. I'm not part of anything. And he told me the story, and it really helped me. He said, my first year out, when I started baseball, he said I was supposed to do a spring training game. He said, and it was in Orlando. He said it was at that stadium
Yeah.
right by
Yep.
the center.
Disney.
He said I pulled
Yep.
in, I parked at Disney, and he said I pulled in, I parked in the parking lot. He said, and I had a hard time getting out of the car.
Yeah.
He said I sat there for 45 minutes in the heat. I said I had a hard time getting out of the car, and finally I got out of the car. And when I walked in there, he said, you know what? Everyone treated me no different than if I was coaching a team or not coaching a team. He
Mm.
said, Seth, you walk in there with your head high,
Mm.
be
Mm.
yourself, and
Yep. Yep.
it'll be fine. But I'll tell you one thing,
Mm.
walking through that door, that was hard, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
that was an
Yeah.
emotional day for me.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
emotional day for me. So yeah, I mean, I try to stay busy in the summer. Like I say, in preparation and
Mm.
get a chance now with the grandkids to go see them some. Take a family trip. We actually usually go out there to Pelican. Shameless plug. Maybe they can give me a break on a room. They don't give any breaks anymore. But Pelican, we like to go out there, for a week and just hang out. And
Yeah.
last summer, actually last spring, it was great because it was right after the Final Four, which was in Phoenix. We flew right there, and it was my
Yeah.
birthday on the 18th. And Karen surprised me, and we went go to this whole new Mexican restaurant right on A1A, and I walk in, and all of a sudden I look to my left, and I see Ralph Jacobs, one of our players at Long Beach, and I didn't see anyone else. I just like, Ralph, hey, Karen, Ralph's here. And then I look up, and she surprised me, and we had like 35 of my guys
Oh.
from Long Beach there,
Oh, that's great.
and
That's great.
it was
Yeah.
an unbelievable
Yeah.
night.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, Lucius and Brian
That's
and
big.
and all those guys and
Yeah.
and James Cotton and we I was the brunt of most of the stories, but it was a great night.
Well, if you come to
I got
Pelican
killed that
Hill,
night.
I live about a mile from Pelican Hill, so when next time you come, we got to hang out. But
That doesn't
all
suck.
right, Seth. It doesn't suck. All right, here we're going to dive into this one now, because we can't talk coaching and sports and basketball and college athletics without talking about. I want your take. And I'm out now, so I'm out of the NIL and the transfer portal. And you and I have had players transfer in. We've had players transfer out. Guys have had to sit out a year. And here comes both the NIL, where kids are allowed to get, paid for their name, image, and likeness. Yeah. And then on the same time, the NCAA passes, in my view, the craziest rule ever, that guys can transfer every single year up to 4 times, I guess, without sitting out, which to me, that one blows my mind. And, I'm sure there's a reason. There was probably a lawsuit, I'm sure, behind that one, like all of them. But if you were the commissioner for a day, if you were the president of the NCAA for a day, and they said, okay, Seth, you've been around this for a long time, you've seen it all, there's very little you haven't seen, because at some point, I think we all agree, kids getting paid money's okay. We get that. But there has to be guardrails, at some point. This can't just be wide open. It'd be like pro sports with no contracts and everybody just changes teams every year. You never know who's on your roster. So I don't even know if you have an answer for this, because I don't think this is an easy one to solve. Okay, I want to hear it because
I got an answer.
Okay, talk to me, Seth. Talk to me. Here we go.
It is. I did this the other day on our show. Look, we need contracts. We need contracts, 2 or 3 year contracts. That's first and foremost. We need contracts. Obviously, collective bargaining impacts that. Secondly, we need to bring academics back into college athletics. We're going to have a base. You're going to start with a base salary, like we all had when we coached, right? Base salary. Then you had your stipends from radio, television, whatever. So your base salary. Then there's incentives for academic progress, retention, graduation, community service. All right. And then there's also incentives for team success and individual awards. Then on top of that, there's a buyout, because you're going to have a 3-year contract. And the buyout, if you want to transfer, because you have a contract, it's binding, just like you had a contract when you went from Murray to Alabama. All right. You have a buyout. So if you want out, that's fine. Either the institution that you're going to go to has to pay a buyout, or you've got to pay the buyout. But you cannot enroll in that institution until the buyout is paid in full. Whew. What does that do? All right. What does that do? It puts academics back into the equation. What does that do? It stops the transfer portal from taking over. And it's not, we can call it NIL. It's pay for play. That's neither, there's very few that are NIL. There are some, but it is what it is. It puts academics back in the equation. Why is the NCAA saying they're going to give a 5th year now? They're giving a 5th year now because with all these transfers, graduation rates are going to go down. All right, but you got to be an idiot not to graduate in 5 years, even with transferring 3 and 4 times. But graduation, academic progress to motivate the student athlete to make progress, retention, and that retention is not paid until you are enrolled in classes the first semester, the next semester after that year. So, like in that contract, at the end of the season, all right, that's fine. Just say 30% of whatever is going to be promised you. You're not getting any of that until school starts the next year and you're on campus and you're enrolled. All right, and all the retention money, in my opinion, and the incentive money should be in deferred compensation, so that when those young people leave, they actually then, if they can find a money manager, all right, they can then at least start their lives well ahead of most guys that are graduating. And again, there's a lot to it, but we've got to get academics back. We've got to have some form of guide rails. We've got to find a way to, you can transfer, but there's no different than we can change jobs. I love when Bill always said, well, you can change jobs. You change jobs. Yeah, and I pay the buyout every single time I change jobs. So to me, I think that is a starting point that we've got to look at, because year-to-year free agency is impossible. And roster construction is
Yeah.
impossible. Right now, the most important thing in building a team is roster construction. Like you mentioned
Yep.
Kentucky. They got two
Yep.
dogs in Oweh and Butler. They got three big
Hmm.
time shooters. They got a skilled four, and they got two big guys that can play in the block. All older. Good roster construction. It's not about
Hmm.
acquiring talent. It's about the construction of your roster. But that's kind of
Yes.
just in my head how I just think would
Yep.
work.
I like it, Seth. You're on to a lot. You need to keep preaching that as much as you can. Here's one thing I would add that I want your take on this. And I had Dan Gavitt on my show, and Dan, you know Dan, I
He's
know Dan.
great.
Dan's probably the best, brightest guy the NCAA has ever had working for him, in my view.
Yeah.
He's that good, and with the tournament, men's tournament, women's tournament, all that. But I even talked to Dan about the fact that what bothers me is when Ed O'Bannon started the lawsuit. I coached Ed 5 years at UCLA, and it went all the way to Supreme Court. And name, image, and likeness was kind of birthed. It birthed out of that lawsuit. We've got the NCAA, the tournament itself, which is the greatest show on earth, and it generates over 1.1 or 2 billion per year.
Yeah.
Yet the NCAA, they need to take that money, a lot of that money, and I understand it covers all the other sports championships. I understand the equation. But, the pressure on schools, collectives, agents, somebody to give these kids money, the NCAA tournament is the cash cow. It's there. And in my view, they're still kind of holding theirs. They're holding on to their money. And I told Dan I wouldn't be shocked. I hope it never happens. I hope this never happens. But I wouldn't be shocked at some point you get in the tournament or a Final Four and a group of young players say, we need to get paid to be here. You're making all the money. If you're not going to pay us, we're not playing, period. And I hope that never happens. But I think the NCAA's got to participate too, Seth. They've got to share the load of where some of this money comes from. If I was an athletic director right now, I would be on the NCAA so hard. You're putting all the pressure on me to raise money for my teams. I need you to help me. Hell, you guys are the ones making so much money every year. We're not talking about millions. We're talking about over $1 billion with a B. So I don't know if I'm right on that, but that's my view, Seth. I don't know what your take would be in that regard.
I think it's good. It would obviously timeline would have to come into play in that. How many sports do you cover in that area? Is it football and just basketball? Is it just basketball? Does football break off and become their own entity? I mean, that's another conversation. But yeah, I mean, there's a ton of money. I mean, with the collective bargaining, supposedly every school is going to get $22 million. I don't know where that $22 million comes from. The collectives is the tricky thing. And, we're seeing guys being promised stuff and not delivered on. Because unless you have a guy that's just going to write a $5 million check, or four guys that are going to write $2 million checks, all right, the collectives, you're going to have donor fatigue. And the
Oh, without a
collectives, they're
doubt.
raising money day to day. They're, like most collectives are raising money. Hey, we're going to have a golf tournament here. We're going to have a speech there. We're going to have, Travels Insurance is going to do a clinic with the Connecticut basketball team. And they're going to, pay $25,000 here. And, and like all that's, but that's like that money's coming in dribs and drabs and you can't make payroll. It's like running a bad business. And, coaches, there are no contracts. So coaches or not coaches or, whomever is handling the collectives is negotiating is promising money that they don't have in hand a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to get that under control. But yeah, I mean, look, there's a shit ton of money being made in the NCAA tournament. Football, there's a ton of money being in the college football playoffs.
That's
Women's
right.
basketball
That's
Final
right.
Four makes money. The Frozen Four makes money. I don't know. It's not the same amount of money, but Frozen Four makes money. But yeah, I mean, it's what's going on now. It is crazy. I mean,
It
I
is
talk to
crazy.
guys every single day. I stick three or four coaches every day, plus the guys I'm messing around with, and the stories I hear. And you know
It's
what's happening? And the last thing I'll say on this, Mark, is that everyone, and this is my talk to all these young guys, they say, well, how do you coach our teams? I said, coach your damn teams. Because, like, if you coach them hard, all right, if they leave because you're coaching them hard, then you know what? They're not helping you win. If you don't coach them hard, you're not going to win and you're the one leaving. So
right.
coach your damn team. Set a standard,
Yeah.
have core beliefs,
Yeah.
have non-negotiables.
Yeah.
Come to every single today. You can't have a bad practice
Yeah.
and coach the crap out of your team every
Hmm.
single day. And you know what? If a kid can't buy into that, then you know what? He's not helping you win the games you need to win.
Right. That's right. That's right. You know what makes me a little bit sad too, Seth, when I look around and I see like Jim Larinaga, and I see what a phenomenal basketball coach he is. You look at Tony Bennett. I sat with the athletic director at Alabama. We talked about Nick Saban, and we I asked the question point blank: do you think NIL and the transfer portal, had anything to do with him? Absolutely is the answer. But you look around and
Yeah,
you see great coaches. And I look at like Tony Bennett, who you and I both probably have. You
yeah,
can't have a whole lot more
yeah,
respect for a coach than you do Tony.
yeah,
Tony
yep.
is the cream of the crop of everything. And where does he go to coach if he really wanted to? Because college athletics is not. This is not what he wanted, and maybe it's the NBA, but I'm not sure that's his thing. But that kind of breaks my heart a little bit. That there are coaches that are stepping away. They're just like, you know what, this isn't anymore. This isn't fun anymore. And I know you got to try to make it fun. And there are younger coaches that have embraced this whole thing, and they're going to probably flourish. But that does kind of make me sad a little bit when I see guys who are really, really good
Yeah,
that are stepping away.
yeah.
That kind of breaks my heart.
Yeah, look, I tell this to I tell this to Izzo all the time because he's obviously very emotional about this subject. I say, here's the deal,
Mm-hmm.
Tom. Either if you're going to coach, then coach your team
Yeah,
like you always
you
have.
got to.
You have resources. Do what you're comfortable doing. Everyone should do it what they're
Mm-hmm.
comfortable doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get to the point where it's just so overwhelming that you
Mm-hmm.
despise the entity, and then
Mm-hmm.
you know what? Walk. But if you're going to do it, you're going to have both feet
Got
in,
it. You
and
got
you've
to.
got, don't, and of course he
Yeah, you
doesn't
got to.
cheat his guys.
Mm-hmm.
And you do what you're comfortable doing. It's like anything.
Yeah.
It's like anything else in life. You do what you're comfortable doing. If you're not comfortable doing something, you shouldn't do it. But
Yeah.
if you love coaching and you love impacting
Mm-hmm.
lives, and you still think you could be successful, stay true to yourself. Don't let
Yeah.
it change you. But you have to have some agility. But don't let it change you. And
Right. Right.
I think that's true in life. I mean,
Yeah.
we've all
Yeah.
been put in
It
situations we
is.
had to make choices, and just you
Mm-hmm.
make choices that you're comfortable with.
Yeah. Seth, switching gears here. We're going to close up pretty quick, but I'm curious to this. You watch as much or more basketball than anybody, and I still watch a lot. I watch, and are there a handful? Every year we never know. Somebody gets hot at the end of the year, but at this point in the season, we're just kind of starting the conference play a little bit. Turn after Christmas and after the New Year. But are there 2 or 3 or 4 teams that there's not 10 or 20, but a handful
Yeah.
that you see that you say, boy, if this team plays its best, they can win it? Which
Yeah,
teams would those
Auburn.
be in your mind?
Sorry to do this. I'm sorry to do this to you, Auburn. uh, I mean, just to be honest with you, look, they're old. Uh, they can beat you in the half court. They can beat you in transition. They can beat you with their
Mm-hmm.
defense. They can beat you on the glass. They can beat you with shot making. They can beat you in the paint. They have incredible depth. Style of play is hard to play against, and he is a savant coming out of timeouts and dead ball
Yes.
situations. First play of the half, less his special situations. They're one.
Yes.
Your team, to be honest with you, is another one. If they Alabama is another one that I think is going to be in the
Yep.
conversation. They're just scratching the
Yep.
surface. I think Philon
Mm-hmm.
and Sears are figuring each other out. I think Nate's figuring
Mm-hmm.
out his rotation. He's playing a zillion guys right now. Amori's got a role, but not probably the role that he thought he was going to have. They're almost better with
Mm-hmm.
Grant at the 5 spot, Nelson at the 5 spot. Uh, the Reed kid is really good. I think he's still piecing it together. You can see slowly but surely the minutes are being more
Mm-hmm.
condensed, which now they're getting greater trust defensively, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is
Mm-hmm.
important. I think Duke is a team that's just going to get better. His roster construction was great. The addition of
Mm-hmm.
Mason Gillis and Malik Brown and Sion James, grown men, to complement the 2 guys he had returned and Foster and Proctor. With Cooper, who's really, really just a winning player. Like people wait for
Mm-hmm.
a Zion moment. He's not Zion Williamson, but all he does is impact winning. I mean, he defends,
Mm-hmm.
he rebounds, he
Mm-hmm.
passes. He's a playmaker. He's a point forward. He just he helps your team win. He never does anything you can't do.
Yeah.
I think Duke's going to be one. Houston's defense is ridiculous if they can shoot a little more
Yeah.
consistently. I mean, their defense
Yeah.
is good. I think we've got Tennessee, that backcourt. I mean,
There you go.
I don't know. I'd want to play against a Kai Ziegler and Jamal
Mm-mm.
Meshack every day. I mean, like those
Mm-mm.
you're talking dogs. Those guys are dogs. I think
Mm-hmm.
they're in the equation. The kid Chazlanier they got is ridiculous. How quick he gets it off.
Yeah.
He's got a little quick Mark Gottfried quick stroke right there. Back in the day, boom, just give it to him, let it fly. I could see you coming off the 5 outs on the pit, boom, kick it out to you. Which says let it fly. I mean. Uh, so I think that I think Tennessee is really good.
Yeah.
I think that there's probably 8 or 10 teams, but those
Yeah.
teams off the
Yeah.
top of my
Yeah.
quickly
Yeah. Yeah.
have good balance. Older teams. Illinois would be the
Mm.
other one. They're the one young team.
Yep. Yep. Super.
Kasparis,
Yep.
Chaconis. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
good.
Good.
They're good.
Yeah.
They're good.
Really, really, really good.
Really good.
Well, Seth,
Fun to
this has
watch.
been phenomenal.
It's been good catching up, man.
It has been great. And we've been friends a long time. We competed against each other. Your teams were hard to play against. Hard. Never laid down. If you're ahead, you better play to the buzzer. If you're behind, you're in trouble. But just did a great job. So, man, I'm proud of you for what you've been doing in TV.
Appreciate it.
And let's stay in touch. But, man, thank you so much for being on the show today. Phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you. And hey, I appreciate you, man.
Okay, Seth. Seth Greenberg, thank you very much.